Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tailosive Tech. So a lot of questions I keep getting are about, Drew, what is your go-to Android phone? What do you like on the Android side? Stop giving the iPhone all the credit. Give some credit to what Android can do and some things you do like about Android. That's been a very difficult question because there is a increasingly smaller amount of Android phones that I actually like. Used to like Galaxy products, that I tried the S9 and just had an awful experience. Not really a fan of the Pixel line that so many people are a fan of. The OnePlus phones are pretty good, but I mean, after that product Red One dropped, it's just like, well, just keep doing what Apple's doing, except without the charity work, so I guess go for it. But today I want to talk about a phone that I think is original. It does not do necessarily the type of things that I care about in a phone, but it's doing something that I think not that many people are doing, and I think it's doing it well. This is the ASUS ROG phone. So I'm going to be calling it the ROG phone because that's easier to pronounce than ROG. And maybe a lot of you will be confused because you'll say, well, Drew, this phone doesn't do a lot of things that you care about in a smartphone, or things you've criticized other Androids for not having. But my point here is this is not trying to be an iPhone competitor. This is trying to be its own genre, which is why I'm okay that it does some things that I don't really care about in a smartphone and is missing some features that I would appreciate in my iPhone. And I'm not trying to say that the ROG phone is something I would consider switching to. This is just something I find interesting, and if I were required, at gunpoint to switch to Android, this is something I would probably consider looking at. So if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I really wasn't a fan of the Razr phone. Its primary feature was basically got a 120 hertz display, which looks really good, but it's not turned on by default, and the cameras aren't that great, and it's kind of a boxy, basic, ugly looking design, and I overall was just not that impressed with it. With a phone with just a Snapdragon 835, and that's about it, I'm just not that interested. This phone, I think, caters perfectly to the gaming market and does a lot of things gamers would appreciate, and some things I've never seen in a smartphone before, and I applaud ASUS for doing some original things that do not involve a motorized camera pop-up system. I think that's just weird. It's not the future, but a lot of the things they're doing with the ROG phone, I think, appeal to the common market now. Not necessarily a phone built for the future or for portless challenges, more the opposite, but I'm just more impressed someone finally put more than one charge port on their phone. So they've got USB-C and a headphone jack at the bottom. Not the biggest fan of the headphone jack, but again, we're talking about a different market here. This is catering to gamers, where that is going to be important. But at the same time, the ROG phone has its own docking mechanism on the side of the phone that you can attach this little bracket that has a cooling system, an actual fan on it, you can hear it, to keep the phone cool, and this allows them to do overclocking. So they can speed up and push the Snapdragon chips to higher than it's supposed to be clocked, because in fact, inside the phone, it has a vapor cooling system. So it's clocking in at 2.96 gigahertz with a Snapdragon 845 10 nanometer octa-core with Adreno 630 GPU. This means all of this stuff is getting pushed to the limit because they have adequate cooling systems built into a smartphone. To me, that's cool. From a practicality point of view, I feel like that might affect water resistance, but see on the website, they have one picture of it with like water being splashed on it, but really nowhere does it say this is IP67 or anything. So maybe it's just slightly resistant to water, but they don't have an IP rating for it yet. So due to it using fans and having a vapor cooling engine, it probably can't be very water resistant. But again, this is not what this phone is trying to do. This is not for the everyday consumer. This is not for the iPhone user. ASUS is not trying to steal users from iPhone. They are just trying to cater to the gaming market. And I think this is a great way to do that. The other thing this has that I've never seen in a smartphone before is you can have up to 512 gigabytes of storage built in. Yes, that's half a terabyte in a phone, and on top of that, when you buy the ROG phone, you get 100 gigabytes of Google Drive storage for 1 year. So that's far over half a terabyte of storage just for getting this phone, and that's something I don't see very often unless you can do expandable storage and stuff like that. But this literally has it built in, 8 gigs of RAM, supports gigabit speed, so overall tech specs are up high. And then the next thing that I find very interesting about this phone is the display. It's an AMOLED display, and yet it's capable of getting up to a 90 hertz refresh rate. So not the crazy 120 hertz that we saw with the Razr phone, but again, that is an LCD display, so we're expecting that the ROG phone probably will get a little bit better colors, a little bit deeper blacks, but I don't think I've ever seen an OLED display be able to hit 90 hertz before, which is insane to me. It's a 6-inch display, 2160 by 1080, so very high resolution, front-facing speakers, and of course, gaming HDR and mobile HDR are supported. So I imagine this display, even though it doesn't get up to 120 hertz like some people may appreciate on the Razer phone, color accuracy, response time, detail is going to be really, really good. And the next real creative thing they did with this is all the accessories you can attach via this new docking mechanism on the side of the phone, because they know that so many gamers out there want to play their games in landscape. And what's so frustrating about smartphones when gaming in landscape is you've got your charge port on the side here, which means that when you're playing your game, you have to kind of make room with your hands for the charge cable or for the headphone jack if you're using wired headphones. So thanks to this docking accessory, you can charge the phone and plug in headphones to the side of it so that you can play your games in regular landscape and not have to hold your phone in a weird way. Since the speakers are front facing, your hands are not going to be covering up any speakers when you're watching content. And they also make kind of like a D-pad separate accessory that allows you to be running two displays at the same time. And as Unbox Therapy has demoed on this channel, this even allows for you can be playing your game on one of the screens and streaming it to Twitch and reading the chat with the other display. I think that's absolutely awesome. I think that being able to watch the chat, watch the live stream, and play your game on a smartphone while charging and using headphones is just incredible. And the fact that they were able to make a phone that is capable of doing this is extremely admirable and very impressive. I'm happy to see that some Android OEMs are thinking, how can we push the limit? How can we make something that no other phone can do? Which is what I appreciate about my iPhone. A lot of the features that keep me on iOS are the exclusives, are the things I can't find elsewhere. And for the gaming market, I think the ROG phone is perfect for this because so much of what they're advertising it can do is not possible with other Android OEMs. These fan hookups that can help cool your phone down. If you care about RGB, the logo on the back can be customized to any color. It can change colors. They literally beat the RGB logo on the back before Razer did it. The Razer phone did not have RGB, and that's kind of Razer's whole shtick with all their accessories, yet the ROG phone can do it. So I'm not completely against the idea of gaming phones. Probably the biggest issue I would have with the ROG phone is the fact that it's running Android, so the games on it are not going to be very high performance. They're not going to be that great, and that's probably what's going to keep me from buying it or wanting to switch to it. But if you guys want me to be more fair on this channel and give more credit where credit is due, this is a phone that I think deserves some respect for doing some original takes. One really big advantage I see is you'll be able to dock the ROG phone into this accessory that gives you all of these desktop class ports like HDMI, tons of USB ports, SD card slot, and then you can literally connect it to an external display, keyboard and mouse, sort of like Samsung DeX. But I imagine this phone with its overclocking capabilities and its octa-core CPU and all that RAM, Geekbench scores on it are probably going to be pretty good, and gaming on it is going to give you a huge advantage if you're playing mobile apps, you know, through the Play Store, but you have a keyboard and mouse. Having this phone gives you a very unfair advantage and borderline okay for the developers, but still, I don't think that many people are going to buy this anyway. So to the iOS fans out there, I'm not saying we all need to switch to this phone. I'm just saying that when I look to the competition and I look towards Android, what I really appreciate is finding phones that try to market themselves as their own thing, you know, not try to just adopt a notch unnecessarily or directly duplicate the feeling of iOS so that they can feel like, we're an iPhone 2, we're an iPhone 2. People who like their iPhones aren't really interested in switching, okay? They're happy with them, they don't want to leave iOS. So what I want to see with Android phones and Android OEMs is them meet their own market. I mean, just look at the back of the ROG phone. That's such a unique, interesting design. They don't put the dual camera in the same place Apple does. They don't put the fingerprint reader in the same place as everyone else. They go with this design element and they put it in a very sleek looking, stealthy way that I just find fascinating. I think this is just a great way of catering to your own market and not just trying to steal iPhone users, which is what so much of Android is this day. It's just like, what does Apple do? Let's do that. That's what we see with the Pixel. That's what we see with OnePlus. You see it less so with Samsung, but I don't know. I just don't want my pictures being sent to random people. So sorry, Samsung, that's important to me. This phone is not officially out yet, and we don't exactly know the price, so that could definitely change my answer as well. If this ends up costing $1,200, I may have to be like, oh, well, it's still cool, but yeah, that price is a little high. I'm hoping this is just under $1,000, and if so, I hope you Android people out there who refuse to switch to iOS can check it out, because I'm curious to see how the cameras perform. They're probably not the best, but can it work as a reliable, useful, everyday smartphone? I would love to hear it from you guys. So there's my praise towards Android. This is something I like seeing. I applaud ASUS for being different. And are there different Android OEMs that you guys want to applaud and say, these guys are cool because they do something their own way? They are not just trying to steal iOS users every year. If you've got interesting stuff like that, definitely let me know in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.